regular Zoom.
Webinar. Okay, Ezra, you should be able to make yourself pretty and join us. Whoa. Hey, man, what's going on?
Ezra,
Not much. Busy as usual. How are you?
We are good. Is that Tel Aviv in the background?
Closest thing I could find to it.
Love it, man. Very nice. It was so funny. I was like, God, I've been to Ezra's house. That's not right. So Ezra, Paul, Ezra.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Paul.
Paul is in Kingston, New York, and had a meeting today with Warren Buffett's son about. Well, explain what it was about, Paul.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get him to backstop and seed a social impact fund we're trying to start. So my idea is to create a series. Well, it's kind of like a franchise model. We want to be able to give franchisees a package, being municipalities or counties or sponsors in local markets, to work towards bringing capital from Wall Street to Main Street via small little private equity funds. We'll leverage like CrowdStreet or Investor Management Services in the background. They do all the shareholder relations, but we'll have different micro funds all over the place for each community, and you can invest in the businesses that you do, where you shop and eat and all that type of stuff, to try to help prop them up. So it's kind of like a little social impact play. We're testing it here in Kingston, Ulster County. We're about 90 miles north of New York, up in the woods. And Peter Buffett's got a place here, and we called him, and yeah, we're going to try to get him to backstop the legal and some initial marketing so we can roll out and test it here. The attorneys, we released them this morning to build replicable documents, private placement memorandums, subscription agreements, operating agreement, so we can give a template to all the municipalities and sponsors who want to roll this program out. And then we're going to run the community hub exchange in the background with document portals, investor certifications, all that type of stuff. So that's my elevator pitch.
All right. Sounds like you got a lot of work ahead of you.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this on Friday. It bothered me, and I spent the weekend. I designed the whole process flow, worked on some claims for the private placement memorandum and a bunch of the disclosure stuff already. So it's just another offering as far as I'm concerned, but you know, always looking to make things more complex to drive Jason nuts.
Yeah, because Jason needs more nuts.
Yes,
especially I'm surrounded by Corona.
That's probably not too soon for that.
Well, you know.
How about this? I was being chased by Corona, so I went and got it. No? Yeah. Too soon?
Here, you guys social distancing? I'm not. Woo!
Nice. So we're about 11 minutes out from starting at about, so in about 8 minutes, I'm sorry, 10 minutes out from starting. In about 8 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and start the handshake to have the platform go live on Facebook. I'll give you a warning. We already have 3 people sitting 10 minutes before as an attendee. That's kind of weird that they're sitting parked. And yeah, so we've got 2 other people joining you, Ezra. We've got, as you know, I think Roberta Schwartz, Lee Schwartz's wife, who's the Chief Innovation Officer at Methodist System, and then Patty DeDominic, who's just kind of a business coach for small and medium companies and has been helping them a lot on strategy and planning and how to move forward and during this time. So we'll try to cover a variety of topics. We'll go likely, you know, just a 5-minute quick go around with Roberta, you, and then Patty. And then if we have questions, Paul will be monitoring the questions here on the Q&A. And then, no, Paul, are you also monitoring Facebook Live?
I'm going to monitor whatever you want me to. I'll be able to see it all. I believe I'll be able to see the stuff coming on Facebook Live. We didn't
Yeah.
discuss that.
And then the goal is to try to filter questions a little bit. So sanitize them, so Roberta doesn't have to deal with the questions that she's been getting, like, this is a conspiracy and we know Methodist Hospital's profiting from it and you helped with Bill Gates to make the virus. That, by the way, is a real comment that she gets daily.
Okay.
And in the world of Looney Tune. And then, of course, there's now the conspiracy going around that I don't know if you guys have heard this one, but it's gaining traction among right-wing Alex Jones kind of people that Bill Gates fabricated it and he's making a profit off of it. And that's why he came out in 2015 and said this will be coming. And so, just good sane dialogue. So Paul is going to filter that stuff out, please. And then I don't know where Stuart is. Stuart should be joining.
Might throw Ezra a zinger or two.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuart will be monitoring the Q&A here on Zoom, but because you're a co-host, you're going to see like stuff on the bottom of your Zoom. You may see the chat screen or the Q&A screen light up. Don't worry about any of that. Just do your thing and ignore that.
Okay.
So we can make sure you're not getting wackadoodle questions. So your hair's looking good, dude. I need a haircut. Paul, as always, your hair looks
Thank you.
same.
Nicholas cut my hair.
I slipped it under the wire. I got it haircut right before they shut the city down, so I'm in a little better shape. But
sorry, Stuart has his hand raised. Would you like to bring him into the panel?
I just moved him to a panelist.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stuart Scoville, unmute.
Yeah, so my son Nicholas just left here driving down to Manhattan. He's got his apartment down there, hasn't been there for 5 weeks, and he's got to go grab some of his stuff. He's going into the combat zone.
Is Kingston still like a total lockdown?
Yeah, total. Yeah, all in New York is. He was showing some video a friend of his was taking in New York City, like Fifth Avenue, dead, no cars. It's kind of surreal.
And what are your partners doing? The guys that are, what are the name of those guys with the coffee company again?
Oh, Super Coffee?
Yeah.
They're out stocking shelves. They're just about to close, and we're just about to close about 4 weeks ago, a $20 million round that Pepsi is participating in. We reviewed and finalized those docs a month ago, and then everything started shutting down. They finished last year with 30 million in sales, and we're shooting for 100 million this year, and are doing everything they can to keep stores set shelves stocked, to keep product out,
How many rounds of funding? Patty meet Ezra, Stuart meet Ezra, Patty meet Paul, Paul meet Patty. So guys, Patty may look like a gentle, kind person. She is Stuart and I's business coach, and she terrifies us.
She scares the shit out of us pretty much.
She really does scare the shit out of us. Like one time on a call, it was something that I forget what it was, but she said, Jason, if you don't do it, I'm going to fly down there. I'm going to charge you $10,000 for coming down there. I'm going to punch you in the nose. And I was like, ha, ha, ha. And then I got off the phone and I called Stuart and I was like, I'm not sure she was joking. So,
well, for you, 6,900.
Thank you, I guess.
Yeah.
We're waiting on Roberta. What I speculate is, I know that she's kind of being nailed from all sides at the hospital today. I've had messages from 3 different members of her staff, which is weird. I want 3 assistants. I don't know what they would do. But so we're in 2 minutes, Patty, going to go ahead and start the handshake process to Facebook. And then for a couple minutes, we'll be getting all the broadcasting set up on Facebook, and we'll be good to go. What I was telling Ezra was the way we're going to do it is we're going to do a quick roundtable with you, Ezra and Roberta, just talking about some general topics, which I'll throw at you. Like, Ezra, tell me, where do you think the economy are? We're really in new territory. What should businesses be thinking about? How afraid should they be, just at a general level for small and medium businesses? Roberta was going to be, where are we as far as the curve on a national
Jason,
and regional basis?
Sorry to interrupt you. There are 5 people in just the attendees. I don't know if they're in like the green room or if they can actually hear us.
They can't hear us.
Okay.
I don't think. If somebody in the green room can hear us, can you send a chat message? Because all of you people in the green room actually are close friends, so that's good. I hope you can't hear me. What's interesting is
Yes, they can. Yes, they can hear you.
Yeah, they can hear us.
Well, there you go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Jason's Ability to Manage Technology. I don't know how I did that, but we're all live online. I'm glad I changed my background. Thank you, Lee. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, since some folks can apparently already hear us, and I'm going to start the handshake connection to Facebook, which will take a couple of minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're glad to have you. If you could just bear with us for a minute. Stuart, if you can keep an eye out online for Roberta joining us as a panelist.
Patty, part of the problem, Patty, is Jason's been doing D work all day today and shouldn't have been doing that.
That's a true story.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So we're going to start the connection. Thanks for your patience for those folks on Zoom who are watching us live as we move to bring this in, and we'll be starting promptly on time at 4 o'clock.
Roberta's connecting
Quick
right
question,
now.
Jason. I just put the link to my Facebook business page in the chat. I don't know if you can do something about that, or if I need to plug in an address to my Facebook page to broadcast.
Yep. I'll link it all together. And we have Miss Roberta Schwartz.
I have arrived.
All right.
Good to see you. We are going live on Facebook right now. And please work. Okay. So this is going to take just one more minute because it requires like 2 or 3 handshakes on Facebook. And we're going to start off, Roberta, with you in just a moment. And we should see, okay, so we are now live broadcasting on Facebook. So thanks everyone for joining. We are not going to wait as the attendees side starts to build up. Thank you for being here. The goal today is pretty simple. It's just to provide the people both live on the interwebs and watching via Zoom some guidance on, and hopefully some peace of mind, and maybe a tip or two that can help you in your business today. We're going to start off with Roberta, and Roberta is the Chief Innovation Officer for the Houston Methodist Hospital System, and she's also the executive over the downtown campus. And the Houston Methodist Hospital System, correct me if I'm wrong, is around 18,000 or so employees. Roberta, you know, everyone keeps talking about a peak and when things are going to peak and then come back to normal, and it's sort of like nobody really knows. But from the data you're seeing, do you have any guidance or insight on how things seem to be playing out? Are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? Where should the nation be thinking? And if it's not a question that you can feel comfortable answering, I completely understand.
No, I'm happy to take a crack at it. So around the world, when you've really looked at the COVID situation, there really is this kind of growth of cases, and then at some point there's a plateau. But no matter which country you kind of have looked at the situation, particularly looking most recently at Singapore, at Japan, at a few other countries, they've opened up and then really had to do some closures again, and clamping down once again, because what you see is this little bit of a pattern that goes up and down. And someone described it a little bit like shark's teeth, that there's these peaks and peaks and peaks again. And I think there's nowhere in the world that has what's called herd immunity and really has enough people who have immunity to the virus that a population is kind of safe on a public health level, kind of being completely open. And the question really is, we're going to have these peaks of going up and down where we see different spikes in COVID until such time as there's a vaccine. And so the question is, how can we all live in a world that is going to have various peaks at different time of COVID and yet be able to operate and open up society so that I love the title of the article is, the cure worse than the disease, but it really didn't necessarily really capture the spirit of all of the different complexities. But I think certainly for us in a healthcare world, we need to deal in a world where we can treat COVID patients and treat heart attacks and cancer and strokes. Those things don't stop because of a COVID situation. So all of us, like the healthcare system, are going to have to live in a bifurcated world where we need to deal with a COVID situation, but also kind of live life.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Ezra Gardner is the co-founder of a hedge fund and invests in a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. Ezra, from an investment perspective and a concern perspective, what should businesses be thinking? What are some things they should be thinking about today?
Well, a lot of the businesses, Jason, that we invest in are earlier stage companies that haven't reached what we call escape velocity, meaning that they're generating cash flow sufficient to grow the businesses internally and rather need to raise money externally. One of the biggest impacts that we've seen of the current economic situation brought on by COVID is that a lot of the financing markets have shut down. And so for the earlier stage companies, we are recommending and going through with each of the C-suite people, particularly the CFOs, their expense budgets line item by line item and helping them figure out best ways to husband cash. Of course, this is also very pertinent for all sorts of mom and pop shops that have been around for a long time or a short time. There's an opportunity to negotiate with your suppliers, whether you're running a restaurant or a tire factory or a real estate operation, and you should expect that they are doing the same. And so that's definitely something that everyone should be looking at. But the other thing that we're telling people and telling management teams is to remain calm, because this will be temporary. People will get back to work. Whether the disease comes in waves or doesn't come in waves, people will get back to work. We have a approximately $23 trillion economy in the United States, very, very large economy. In the US government has already committed to spend approximately $3 trillion in stimulus. And my guess is they'll probably spend something on the order of 4 to 6 when all is said and done, with trillions of more that are backing up the plumbing of the banking system, like the mortgage system and small business loans. And that's quite significant, because it's a 1-for-1 exchange for any economic activity lost. So for example, if we could have a 20% decline in the economy, which could be almost entirely, if not entirely, made up by government stimulus. It won't be perfect. It won't be doled out in exactly the way that it should, because speed is more important than accuracy in situations like this. But the last thing I would say, for those who are confused or worried about what the policymakers are doing, while I would tell you that it absolutely isn't perfect, nothing is, having gone through a massive banking financial crisis only 10 years ago, a lot of the pieces of the financial policy technology that were perfect, nothing is, having gone through a massive banking financial crisis only 10 years ago, a lot of the pieces of the financial policy technology that were sorry, I was just hearing the echo there. If you can still hear me.
We can hear you. That was weird. I think I was able to stop it. Keep going.
Because it was only 10 years ago, all of this alphabet soup that some of you may remember reading about, TARP, TALF, all of these programs that took many months to put together were whipped out nearly overnight. And that matters. The speed at which this happens matters. And so I think people should take some reassurance in that.
Thank you, Ezra. Patty DeDominic is a business coach and the former CEO of the Year in Los Angeles. And she has helped coach 2 companies that each sold for more than $1 billion. Patty, you have a lot of clients that are small businesses. And I'm sure, I can't even imagine the questions you're having to field. What are some of the main issues you're having to address with some of your coaching clients, and what are some of the answers you're giving them?
People have learned to pivot at a speed faster than they ever imagined that they could. And our excuses for not making necessary changes have all disappeared. We have the time now, and those people who didn't have depth or systems in their business structure are suffering more. I kind of make the analogy of, if you were built on a house of cards, this is going to be a tough one. Your cards are going to fall. But those companies that did have some strategic depth and were able to quickly mobilize so that their employees could work from home are finding opportunities. And I'm telling them to be patient. I'm telling them to communicate with their team as much as possible, to use this time as the opportunity to make changes that you might not have made before, like getting rid of some non-productive employees who weren't productive for a long time and you really need to restructure. And I'm telling them to apply for every loan or grant opportunity that the CARES Act or any other entity that's trying to make a difference for us has put out there. And so far, I'm aware of my clients having received about $3 million in total funding. That's probably about 7 clients that I personally coach. And one of them got a big grant from the Department of Health Services. And then the rest of them are getting the Paycheck Protection monies and the others. So those are loans with some forgivable clauses.
Thanks, Patty. Roberta, so one thing you're known for is your excellent leadership and your ability to lead under pressure with a million moving pieces. And now in particular is a time when I think leadership in crisis and staying calm in front of your teams and your staff is pretty important. What are some of your top tricks for staying calm in this just incredibly unique scenario and time?
So I'm having the honor and pleasure of serving as our incident commander. So we have about 7 hospitals that we've had to shut down a lot of our business, switch businesses, find new streams of protective equipment, get staff who are not exactly thrilled about risk to themselves and their families, to take care of a population, and then try to also restart our business at the same time as looking at our financial balance sheet and really understanding what it is. So I think the hardest part for us has really been dealing with the emotion. We've been through a lot of hurricanes and weather events and changing IT systems, and I've done many disasters through the years at Houston Methodist. And I think the one thing I've learned over time is just put one foot in front of the other. There's always some kind of solution that comes through, and the generosity of friends, colleagues, people that you have to turn to for help and advice. You have to cast your net really far and have the opportunity to kind of lean on a lot of different places to get your support. So I try not to think in these situations about what's going to happen a month from now. I try to think of the next hour, the next day, the next moment, as well as making sure that I have a team of people beside me thinking about what's going to happen in the next month. So really, as you divide up your world into those that can handle this hour's problems, next week's problems, and next month's problems is a good style to have. But for our incident command, kind of rule number one is stay calm. Stay calm, stay focused, and be there for everybody who needs you.
Thanks, Roberta. So a question that's come up, and I hear this a lot, is herd immunity. What exactly does herd immunity mean is what people want to know. They keep using the term and they want some clarity on what that is.
So, so if you think about a disease, oftentimes we talk about the flu vaccine. And the flu vaccine, we recognize that if you get to a point where about 70% of the population is immunized, you're likely to protect that small percentage of the population that is unable to get immunized because they're allergic to the immunization, or they just can't get immunized for one way or another because of a condition that they're facing. So if most people are immunized, then you are likely to kind of stop the spread because it hits an immunized person, kind of stops there, therefore unlikely to get to those people who are unimmunized. Right now, if you think about it, almost nobody has immunity to COVID, right? The only people who have immunity to COVID is a very small population that has had COVID. And we don't even know right now for how long that immunity lasts. So when you get the flu shot, it's kind of for about 6 months. And then the next year, there's a different flu shot that you would have to take. For COVID, we don't know if the situation is that it'll last for 6 months or last for your lifetime once you've had it. And a lot of people are going through COVID and actually have it that didn't even know that they had it, but they haven't gotten tested. So you, Jason Mittman, may have had COVID and may be immune, but you don't know it because you're not going out to get tested because we don't have enough tests right now. So we don't know what percentage of the population actually has some type of immunity, but the guess is that it's no more than 15%.
Thanks,
but no one knows for sure.
Okay. Ezra, you know, you specialize and have for years helping finding great business opportunities, investing in small businesses and advising them. What does the investment environment look like today for you to take a serious look at a company that's trying to raise capital in today's environment?
It's obviously better. You know, cash is king in times of distress. If someone can find capital out there, you know, they have to make a good deal in order to get that capital. We are finding that there are really creative ways, though, that you can both get a good deal for the investor as well as for the small business. For example, it doesn't do anybody any good for a company that otherwise was doing really great to have to go to an investor and have that investor demand to buy 51% of the company at some ridiculously low valuation because they haven't gotten, they just ran out of money for no fault of their own. The doors closed, the business stopped. But rather, what you can do that's collaborative and cooperative is you can structure something in the form of a bridge loan, where maybe you have some option upside for the investor putting the money at risk, which isn't terribly dilutive to you or to the other shareholders, and can be a win-win for both sides. So there's definitely ways to structure those deals, and there is money out there, both in the private sector as well as in the government, as previously was mentioned.
Thanks, Ezra. Patty, you posted a few comments in the chat. Could you just elaborate on those just a little bit? So one of the things you said here is balance empathy and realism, communicate regularly. What does that look like to you? And I'm very curious because we have 3 leaders who lead from different perspectives, and I do think it's a very hard balance right now of empathy and realism, regardless if you're Roberta and have this incredibly large organization that's on the front lines, or companies coming to Ezra for raising capital, and you for companies that are maybe in chaos. So what is empathy and realism? What does that look like? Oop, hold on, Patty, you're on mute. Let me unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Patty? There you go.
There I go. Okay. Well, let me be real with you. My education really began after I sold my company from being an entrepreneur for 27 years. We entrepreneurs tend to do things by trial and error, and we learn as we go, but not knowing all the things that we need to know to run a multi-million-dollar business, we sometimes do it the slow way. So for me, it took 27 years as an entrepreneur. And then once I began consulting for other companies, including the company that bought mine, my education accelerated. So I have lived not through this, however, I have lived through the '82 recession. I've lived through preparation for Y2K, the panic around that, the recession that took place after that, and kind of sailed through the 2007, 2008, because I sold my business in 2006. Anyway, to your question, realism and empathy. I think it's important. If you remember Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and he interviewed Admiral James Stockdale, and he talked about who survived as prisoners of war and who didn't. It was those people who were overly optimistic and kept getting their hopes dashed, kept being disappointed, or became suicidal because they weren't realistic. So the tips that I wrote for you actually came from Berkeley. I went back to school, back for a certificate program in corporate governance in 2008, I think. And so Berkeley's doing their executive leadership program is doing a series of videos, surviving and thriving in COVID-19, which is very good, and I highly recommend it. I can post the link in the chat if you like.
Please do.
It's important to give your folks some reassurance, even if the only reassurance that you can give them is, we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow or next week. We don't know if the PP money is going to come in or not, or whether the clients are going to cancel their orders as they've threatened to, or if they're going to place bigger orders. But what we do know is that we have the wherewithal to figure out how to behave in the next steps. And I think that's the important thing, is you don't have to sound like you have all the answers, because none of us do. But you do have to be confident that you have the contacts, the resources, the knowledge, and the willingness to go out and get what's necessary to move to the next level. And then the final thing is just to reassure your folks that you have the staying power, that one way or another, we are going to get through this. Even if it's just when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hold on.
Right, right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Patty. Roberta, I've got one more question for you. I know you have an exceedingly complex day, and please feel free to jump when you want. So I happen to be fortunate enough to have a handout that was printed called Roberta's Lesson for a retreat.
Oh, no.
And one of the things on here says, my name is a noun, verb, adjective, and swear word. I am credited with a lot of real statements and functions, and people take me too literally implementing crazy things. You want to expand on that at all?
Oh, you're having fun. So I think one of the things, hopefully I'm off mute. I think one of the things
Sure.
that's that happens is that as you're a leader, right? As you lead now from more than 10 people who can hear it directly from the horse's mouth, people make an awful lot of assumptions on things they've heard. So a lot of times I'll hear Roberta said, and where some people can interpret what you've said, some people take it literally. Roberta said, you know, to do this, I am doing this. You know, they want to be clear followers. And then when they don't like it, they'll say, well, I mean, you know, it was a Roberta thing to do, or whatever it is. And a lot of times I always joke when I change parking is generally when it's when I'm being used as a swear word. So I think
Did
one
you
of
say
the things
parking?
parking, every time you change a doctor's parking, it's not a very popular thing to do.
Okay.
So it's, you can imagine. So I think one of the things you have to learn is both what you're saying and how it's going to be interpreted. And I think it was just said beautifully before, which is really making sure that you do it with a level of empathy that people can really appreciate everything that you're trying to get across, and the why you're doing things becomes exceedingly important, because then people can put it within context rather than just, it's like your parent, right? I told you to do it, so do it that way.
Got it. And Roberta, I've got one more for you, and then if you need to jump at any time, you know, we understand. So a lot of people are, you know, they hear that hospitals are hurting financially, but they see it's, you know, it's a hospital system. How could they be hurting? How could their balance sheet be impacted? What is your answer to a question like that?
Sorry about that, screwed up. So what I would say to you is hospitals basically cleared out to make room for the COVID population. We cleared everything else off our schedules, and hospitals financially kind of survive based on a variety of different patient populations, everything from elective surgical procedures that are being done or scheduled type of surgeries, as well as transfers. A hospital like mine needs transfers that come in from 500 miles away, and we're made up, and the kind of chassis on which we are built holds, you know, 1,200 patients. Well, while some hospitals are filled with COVID patients, not all hospitals are filled with COVID patients, and we only have about 200 of them. So if you think of 200 patients plus some of our emergency patients, about 500 beds are empty right now. And so when you're built for that and you're staffed for a very large hospital and they're not full, it does impact you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Roberta. And again, please stay on. We'd love for you to stay with us and understand. And if for some reason you have to jump, thank you so much for being on the front lines and for everything you're doing. We're, as a country, I think, exceedingly grateful to all of our hospital workers, and from administrative to doctors and everyone in between.
No, I'm so proud of our frontline caregivers. They are amazing.
Yeah, I bet it's pretty difficult. Paul?
Okay, well, you know, yeah, thank you all for your service. It's pretty amazing what's going on here in the world. You know, the economic impact is going to have long-term effects on us. You know, to Ezra's comment earlier, you know, we've got about $2 trillion was pushed into the economy through this so-called stimulus. Really not a stimulus. It was more like a prop or a kickstand. You know, but that was only a small piece of our $21.4 trillion GDP. So, you know, we're going to have to put a few more trillion into this to, you know, balance the economy. You know, the economist, chief economist from the CCIM Institute talked about a total need of about $5 trillion to cover a 3-month shutdown and a 3-month shortfall. Consumer spending's down about 30%, business spending's down about 80%. Business travel is down. 3.5% of the global GDP is travel and tourism. which is a pretty significant number. We're going to have trickle effects here for quite some time. So, everybody's got to be positioning and thinking and I guess pivoting towards this new economy. We've started looking at some different sectors. Everybody has seen the run on the grocery stores. There's speculation that it wasn't really a run on the stores. It's just a shift in people's spending patterns. In 2014 was the first time that consumer spending in restaurants and eating out surpassed grocery store sales. Now that all those restaurants are closed, the grocers can't handle it anymore. We've seen a change in how things are delivered directly to the consumer with the deliveries, but that's not enough. We're going to need more grocery stores and more neighborhood type retails open.
So Ezra and Patty, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because we are in such tremendous uncharted territory, not only from a needed but fabricated stop to our economy, but when we come out of this, we're not coming out of it the same. We've really done a big shift in retail. There is a lot of online delivery. I frankly don't think a lot of that's going to go away. What do y'all think? Ezra or Patty, which one of you would like to kind of chime in first? Patty, why don't you go ahead? Or no, Ezra, go ahead. Go ahead.
Jason, you and I have talked about this a little bit. I'm a little bit more of the opinion that less has changed and less is going to change than people think. For example, the reason that we are on Zoom now isn't because we invented Zoom for COVID-19. Zoom was a multi-billion-dollar company before we started this because the trend towards video conferencing already existed. The reason that we are able to get online delivery of anything under the sun that we want is because there's a small company called Amazon that invented online delivery that happens to be the largest company in the world by market capitalization prior to the start of COVID, and still is now. It's true that there was a temporary lull in some inventory in the grocery chain because there was an immediate pivot from restaurants, from away from home to in-home, but that rectified itself very quickly and the food supply chain is working very well. I read articles initially when the stay-at-home orders began that the internet was going to break. Well, guess what? The internet didn't break. The reason the internet didn't break is because we are an internetified economy already for quite some time. And AT&T and Verizon build internet capacity at least a year to 18 months ahead of demand. And they've been doing that consistently and persistently over time. So the trends that people are calling on to emerge from COVID, I would argue, are trends that were already emerging anyway, because this is the direction that that we were going in. I do believe travel will come back. If you look at business travel, it will take time. It's not going to come back right away, but if you look at business travel, two pieces of business travel that are two of the largest, actually most profitable pieces of business travel for the airlines are sales and diligence. And sales and diligence are not things that can be done remotely for the most part. They are things that need to be done in person. So, and I am very optimistic about the human spirit. Betting against the human spirit to be resilient and bounce back has never been a good bet. We have the trends in place; they're going to continue, and I think we'll emerge stronger.
Thanks, Ezra. Patty?
I think you're going to see a lot more people working from home. I remember 15, 20 years ago, it was pretty rare. A few people did it, or they'd have a remote office. Now more and more people are doing it, and it's something that a lot of people are going to continue to work from home. A short story, there was a huge recession in '82, and I was a young entrepreneur and too naive, and this was my first big business setback. I had a few life setbacks before, but not a big business setback, where everything that I had done in the past few years didn't work. And I was wondering if I was going to go out of business. But at the time, I had 2 leases in Southern California. And get this, I had signed a personal guarantee on those leases. And I was like, oh my God, I can't go out of business because I have a personal guarantee on those leases. If I go out of business, I'd still have to be paying that darn rent. So that's who I was then. And I struggled through and made my excuses to my landlord and paid my rent. And it was okay. I adapted. Instead of having people on salary, I had people working on commission only. I actually had a few volunteers working with me and struggled through. I shifted my customers from advertising agencies and radio stations, which were booming before that recession, which kind of went way downhill. But what did start growing was the courts. So I shifted, and actually my biggest client in 1982 was the bankruptcy trustee. We provided HR services and staffing for them. But what almost killed me wasn't the recession. I managed to figure out how to cope with that. But what was the boom that came after the recession? In a period of less than 6 months, we tripled our annual sales run rate. And in a business that required, we were in the staffing business, so we placed 10 people, we had to make payroll for 10 people this coming week, or 100 people. So that's literally what happened. We put probably 150 people to work in a period of 6 months and quickly ran out of cash. So luckily, the banks have enough experience around the world. I mean, that's why they have their underwriting criteria. It's why the big banks are a little bit less flexible, but they have their algorithms and they can do things online. So your relationships were critical through the downtime and through the uptime. And preparing for the boom that generally follows. I had a really nice infographic. If I can find it, I'll post it in the chat, or I'll post a link to it that talks about the boom 12 months after any epidemic in this country. It's really interesting what's happened with the stock market. Maybe you've seen that. Did you see that graphic, Ezra?
Yeah, they were talking about it today in terms of Coca-Cola, because we have data for Coca-Cola back to the Spanish flu. And that's exactly what happened, because Coca-Cola just reported earnings today and they had terrible earnings, which I think surprised some people. People would have thought that that was a staple, but really there was, purchasing trends and shifts. One thing you did say, Patty, though, that I thought was very, very important, that I'll emphasize again in another way, is that CEOs that we meet, or business managers that we meet that are the best, are ones that are simultaneously able to focus on the short term and the long term at the same time. And that has always been true, but now I think it's more true than ever. And I think that that's what you were alluding to. You have to, in this environment, focus on dealing with all of the roadblocks that are getting thrown up in front of you because of some unprecedented shutdowns in the economy. But you have to also be thinking about how are you going to come out of this, because it'll happen quickly. It'll happen more quickly than you think. And if you're not ready, you won't have completed that pivot that you were talking about initially.
Ezra, thanks.
That's a good segue from one of the questions.
I just want to, just one thing real quick. So Roberta, since you're still on with us, this one's for you. And I know that Roberta, Paul, can you take that down, please?
I
So-
did not put that up there. Okay.
Oh, sorry, that's me. I'm sharing my screen. I can
No,
move it.
yeah, no problem. Go ahead and just take that down for just a minute. So Roberta, I know that for a hospital system, this is kind of the term I've heard is could be as bad as Armageddon. So what do you do as a leader to say, okay, we're in this uncharted territory, and what do you do as a leader to say, okay, we're going to turn it back on, like both Ezra and Patty were saying, and how do you prepare for that? What do you do as a leader in that situation, or what are you doing?
So, turning it back on is not going to be simple. It's not going to be simple for anybody's business. It's not like you're going to open up the restaurant tomorrow and just expect that with all the shelter at home orders and everyone who's nervous to sit next to the person next to them, that the restaurant's just going to be full. So for us, even if we were to open the spigot tomorrow and say every service is available at the hospital, people are nervous to come to hospitals. People are scared to. I mean, one of the things that's just amazing to us is we've watched the traffic of our heart attacks and our strokes and other volume kind of go down. And you realize that there probably aren't less heart attacks and strokes today than there were yesterday. It's just that people are afraid to seek hospital services. So we worry about the long-term health effects that this pandemic really has had. And though we've had epidemics in the past, really it is the Spanish flu is the last time you've had any widespread worldwide pandemic of sorts that certainly has created the level of fear that we have in this society right now about movement and people. And there's a wide range of emotions that are really happening in people, from being completely afraid to move and do anything to those people who are itching to get back to normal life tomorrow and get on the airplane and go. So I think what we're watching is kind of this disproportionate set of emotions in many different ways about seeking healthcare service. And our business has done a fundamental shift in a period of 4 weeks. I expected, you talked about Zoom earlier, and they were a huge company and people were slowly migrating towards video as a way of doing daily business. Well, in ours, telemedicine jumped what I thought would take 5 years, took less than 4 weeks to really become a mainstream practice. So as you look at ways of delivering healthcare, it fundamentally shifted overnight in things that you could have slowly ramped your way into. That changed very quickly. So even our industry is going to have some challenges understanding some major shifts that have happened. And as we talk to physicians who 4 weeks ago said, I will never provide healthcare on the computer, who had to because they had no choice, are now saying, hey, this is great. I may never go back to doing it in my office again. So I think our industries has had some huge changes. And going back to your point of looking at the short term and the long term, right today, we're dealing with COVID, but we're looking at tomorrow in terms of what does our industry look like when we all go back to business.
Thanks, Roberta. And just one quick thing. So we had a question from Melissa Strong. She's a second-year restaurateur, sales up 23% from her first year. Thanks, Patty, for jumping into the chat and answering that. They're a building next door in the process of lining up a construction loan. Lending is pretty unique right now, just to add that in. And you need, I think what is key for everyone listening, focus on your banker relationship. No offense to the really big banks out there. I know you're working very hard, but I think maybe a regional or a smaller bank where you have a strong relationship is really important. And last time we had this call 2 weeks ago, we had Chris Dissinger on the line of LDG. Thanks, Mark, for being on the line with us right now. And what his comment was, he goes, who's been through this several times, both he and Mark, was, you know what? Don't run out of cash. No matter what, don't run out of cash. So Melissa, my guidance to you would be, it would be great if you can get construction going. However, right now, I would try to just take care of what you have versus building on top of it. To be contrarian to myself, though, hopefully right now you can lock in really low construction prices from that. Stuart, I think you had something, you had a question come in that you wanted to add?
Yeah, so just thank you for everybody getting on the call today, and sort of as a follow-up to what Roberta was saying on what is both the short term and the long term, and probably this is more directed toward you, Ezra. How do you see, because there definitely is going to be the new normal whatever the new normal is, and whenever we sort of get to that new normal. And as Patty mentioned, the opportunities that are going to be presented over the next year and the increase in values of various businesses is going to be substantial, but it is under that sort of new normal formula, whatever that may be. And I guess the unknown is what is that new normal? As Roberta said, even if you open it all up today, a restaurant's just not going to fill up, because there's going to be people worried about that. Is a restaurant going to have to take out half of their tables? Are they going to have plexiglass between each table? What does that sort of look like? And I guess from a business standpoint, how do you underwrite that, especially on those businesses that haven't reached that mass yet to really be self-sufficient?
So restaurants are tough. I'm going to come to that at the end. I'm going to go back to somewhere else first in the beginning. There's a famous saying that says history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme. And I've been talking with a lot of my managers and colleagues and trying to think about what this rhymes with. And a lot of us came to the same conclusion that this reminds us a lot of 9/11 in Manhattan. Okay. For those people who were in Manhattan during 9/11, it was absolutely inconceivable to us that in 2 weeks' time we would be back on planes and back in our offices working. And yet it happened. And the reason that this is somewhat of an analog is because it's something that happened very suddenly, that was completely unanticipated and had a dramatic response. We saw the grocery store food shelves empty out then too, but then they filled back up. And I really do believe that the new normal is going to be a continuation of the trends that we saw. We're pulling forward all of these things like, Zoom, online delivery, and that's going to continue. Restaurants, I would put into a category of businesses that rely on social comfort. And it used to be okay to be sick in public. It's not okay to be sick in public right now. People are very scared of that. They don't want to sneeze or cough themselves, and they certainly don't want someone to sneeze or cough around them either when they're out in public. Okay? However, there are a few things that will make being sick again okay. And that is primarily treatment, right? Roberta talked about there being a vaccine, which it's remarkable. It's really remarkable. And she could talk about this much better than I could, but it's remarkable what the pharmaceutical industry has done in a very short amount of time. And there probably will be a vaccine quicker than people imagine, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. And it's not going to happen next month, and it's not going to happen next quarter, and restaurants are hurting very badly right now. However, if there were treatment protocols that made getting sick not as dangerous, and some of those have been talked about very publicly, I think that would be a big help to getting people back out to restaurants and to movie theaters. But make no mistake, there will be some sad stories of small entrepreneurs in those entertainment, restaurants, bars that aren't going to be able to make it. I would reiterate what Patty said, which is make sure you are on top of all of these government programs to give yourself the best chance that you can, and stay optimistic, and be assured that we are social creatures, and we will absolutely want to go back out to restaurants and fly on planes and go to hotels when we know that it's okay to be sick again.
Thanks, Ezra. So Patty, to follow up on what Ezra was just saying, what do you tell some of these restaurateurs and bar owners and similar business people who are just decimated? You have to do more than hang in there, right? It's what are some specific things that, and yes, the PPP program and the EIDL are essential, but there's still a lot of restaurants, I believe, likewise, that will not make it, what gives them the best chance of surviving? What are some tips and tricks they could do?
Well, I think you said it early on about cash being king right now, and making sure that you've absolutely reduced all your fixed expenses that you can, and hold on to the cash as long as you can. I think there will be consideration for people whose credit has been affected because of this. This is an explainable anomaly in the economy. It's probably not going to be the last one that we will have. Also, for people who are in the restaurant or bar business, you guys chose a tough industry. You are a special breed of entrepreneur to go into that business in the first place. But there's something from the Alcoholics Anonymous creed that I love, and it's I can't tell you exactly what it is because I don't have it memorized, but I'm thinking about it. It's understand what you can control and understand what you cannot control, and then have the wisdom to know the difference and do what you can with the things that you can control and the things that are out of your control. So this has happened to me on a couple of occasions. I have a grown son who has mental illness, and I remember talking to a psychiatrist one time, and he said, pray. He says, I've seen people get better with medicine, without medicine. It's the same kind of thing. You need to have your faith. So whether you're a spiritual person or whether you just commune with yourself and the earth, you need to understand that this might be a season, not a day or a blip in time. And so we have to adapt survival strategies, like the bear who hibernates in winter and then reemerges in the springtime. So it's the same thing. Reduce cash, be open and realistic with your people. You can't promise the future, but what you can promise is that you have resiliency, that you're going to leave no stone unturned, that you're going to stay in touch. The other thing I want to just restate, it's really important to have that two-way communication, to learn what's on their mind and what's bothering them. It may not be what you're assuming. And for them to hear from you about what your plans are, even if they're just short plans. We're just going to take a break for a week. We're recognizing that we're not going to do anything now until the end of April or until May 15th or whatever date we've been given. So be realistic and then share information. You don't have to share everything, but share information, because I guarantee you, if you're not sharing, people make stuff up, and it's almost always worse than the truth. So share and communicate so people know that they can count on you to be a source of information, even if it's not the source of all answers.
Great, thank you. And everyone, I see a lot of your questions. Thanks for bringing them in. We are not going to have time to get through all these. We're going to do our best, and please email us afterwards. It's mittman@gmail.com, mittman@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to help you. I know Paul had a comment, and I just want to add one thing to what Patty was saying. You know, under what you can't control, you cannot control what the media is saying, and frankly, it's pretty toxic in many ways. And unless you're someone like Ezra, who has to have a constant pulse on everything going on in the financial markets and the news, because it is his direct business, I suggest what you can control is turning off the media and focus maybe on some other aspects of life. Paul, you had some comments, but I'm also going to throw at you, on top of what Patty and Ezra have been saying on communication. You are a recovering banker. Good job. We love you for getting out of there.
Fully recovered, no more shaking.
Yeah, there you go. And I know that from the last time we spoke, one of the things you've been emphasizing to people, especially with their bankers, is communication. So can you just go over that? And I know you had another comment as well.
Yeah, totally. It's, you know, the banking relationship is a two-way street. You know, they're, you know, feeling internal forces from their underwriters, their call reports and things that have to be submitted to the regulators. So they've got a lot of pressure internally. So they need the complete story so that they can relay that story. In a situation like this, it's anticipated. They anticipate a call. You know, they want to make sure you're depleting and managing your reserves as effectively as possible. but at the end of the day, you're in the boat together. They don't want to take a property back or foreclose on a business. That said, people should also be communicating, with their peer groups. I've been stimulating a bunch of calls with some of our state peer groups in the real estate industry. We're also active small business lenders. We loan to a lot of retailers and restaurants, which is a pretty interesting environment right now. And, I'd like to, no matter what business you're in, put out there, talk to your professionals. This is a good time to get to your lawyer, get to your accountant, talk through some things that you're about to do. At a certain point, a company does not need more debt. They need to be recapitalized. We come across this, one of the managers of the Hudson Valley Startup Fund. We do angel investing, and they want to try to balance a lot of times the debt and the equity. A lot of times you need more equity infusion and not more debt on your balance sheet. So you can't just make the treadmill go faster and think that you're going to keep up with those debt payments. It's a little bit easier to keep an investor at bay. And, going back to the restaurant, those restaurateurs should be going around looking at, who's your best customer that you think is a high net worth person. Talk to them. You can, get a cash infusion from them, give them partial return in food. Your cost of goods sold is probably around 30%, so it's easy for you to give and pass return on, and then have some type of predefined buyout. We do creative things like that in real estate transactions all the time. There's no reasons things like that can't be applied to a business loan and recapitalization.
Thanks, Paul. Some of the questions that are coming in and coming up are, I'm afraid to reopen, or we're fighting for crumbs against other business people one is, for example, a restaurateur in a small town, 30 restaurants fighting for crumbs. So that I think is exceptionally tough, obviously, and all industries are very tough. Ezra, do you have any, if you had your business advisor hat on and some of your portfolio companies are just, they're just not able to reopen, or some of the big problems they're dealing with, can you kind of give us some of your feedback and thoughts?
It really depends on the type of business. Again, restaurants are a different type of business. For our portfolio companies that have, let's say, consumer products or industrial products, any type of company that usually runs a positive inventory and working capital balance, my advice to those type of businesses is do not focus on margins, focus on cash and generate cash from your inventory. Make people offers they can't refuse so that you live to fight another day. They'll end up getting some product at a good price that they'll appreciate. You'll have some cash to be there to come out of this. But again, that doesn't necessarily help restaurants. Restaurants don't carry a lot of inventory. There are some big restaurateurs that I've been seen interviewed on TV that are trying to come up with some creative ideas about doing family style meals where they, where you're able to put less tables together. These are for higher end restaurants where you get people in that wouldn't ordinarily do that. They give away, cooking classes with home delivery, from some, whatever your signature dishes. I don't want to put myself out there at all as an expert. We have no restaurant companies in our portfolio currently. I recognize that those are very challenging issues for them, and I would reach out to some of the association resources that exist out there, and some of the more well-known restaurateurs that have been out there vocally on social media trying to help out their fellow brethren.
Thanks, Ezra. Patty, any thoughts or comments? So one thing then I'd like to add is, there's always some unique ways. One of the companies I've been advising, they have a specialty product to compete against general tea. and they were wholesaling to restaurants and hotels, and obviously that's tanked. So what are other options? If you have the inventory already, does it hurt to get it off your shelf? Can you do it in a way with the restaurants and the hotels in that circumstance where it's, you know, hey, please include this with customers when they come to their pickup. Just give them some with a flyer that links to our website so we can sell online. Can you do some kind of accounts receivable, then factor it and get something for it today? There's a lot of moving pieces. Again, we're not gonna be able to cover everything. We're right at about an hour right now. Another thing I want to remind everybody of before we answer some final questions that have come in as quick as we can is, if you have received PPP money, the Payroll Protection Program, you have to ask for forgiveness. There is forgiveness available, converting that from a loan to essentially a grant, free money. You have to keep close, tight records. We recommend you open a separate bank account that is specifically and only for the funds from the PPP dollars. And you check with your CPA or your advisors to make sure you are spending it on what you are supposed to. Paul?
Okay, so, you know, taking that one step further, everybody's got to be very concerned here about fraud. Just about every business person that I have spoken to has applied for either SBA disaster loan or the PPP through an online format, and all of the responses are somebody will be reaching out to you. This is opening up a great opportunity for scammers to call and say, hey, I'm with the, you know, so-and-so business, I'm with the SBA. You know, we got your application. I could probably call 10 companies right now and get a positive response from 8 of them going, oh, really? You're looking at my application? Oh, what do you need? It's like, oh yeah, I need your social security number. I need your date of birth. I need your mother's maiden name.
Your bank routing information.
Right.
To do the $10,000 wire.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So they're going to be out there. So people just got to be very careful, be proactive. If you do get calls, you know, get a number, say, I'll call you back, or ask them questions. What date did I put my application in? You know, you want the last 4 of my social security number? What are the first 3 numbers of my social security number? You know, be proactive. Don't just give out information, and protect your banking information.
Yeah, and another thing you can do is say, can I call you back? Please give me your number. That, you know, there's some basics. Fraudsters likely won't give you their number, and ask identifying questions. If they have they should have your ABA information. You don't need to share that. Thank you for that. We've had several questions about where should I invest right now? You know, that's a very loaded question. Ezra, if you feel like addressing it, to me, my answer to that is always, that depends on your risk tolerance. It depends on your long-term outlook. It depends on what your goals are. You know, investing for Ezra versus Patty versus me, you know, and Paul and Stuart. So I wouldn't expect that Ezra and Patty could underwrite a commercial real estate deal as efficiently as Stuart, Paul, and I can. And there's no way that I could do the same in Ezra's industry or I could in Patty's industry. So I don't know if either of you feel like fielding that question, but I've had it come in many times to be asked, to be answered. Go for it.
The only answer that's really appropriate to give to that is that if you're investing long-term for your retirement and you have 10 or more years before you're thinking about retiring, and you know you don't need to touch the money from there if it's in specifically a retirement account, you should stay the course. Obviously, things are going to get better, and we're going to come out of this stronger. I'm going to take a pass on obviously giving recommendations for trading in market turmoil.
Thank you, Ezra. I think that's a good idea. Patty, do you have any comments or questions? You look like you have something you'd like to share with the group. Did something come up, or should we pass on you for a minute?
The Beatles were playing Imagine, and I was trying to figure out if that was coming from you or my computer or what.
It's a good time. It's a good song. We appreciate it. Patty, as we wind up, I just want to go one more round. There's a lot of business owners out there. There's solopreneurs, there's small entrepreneurs they have to be juggling, you know, unfortunately, if you did not apply and were waiting to apply for funds, or if you did not get a response, the money's gone. It's out. Hopefully there'll be more coming.
They actually, while we've been on this call, Jason, they approved another $500 billion plan. So they've reloaded the PPP program.
All right. That's great news. Thank you, Ezra. Patty, somebody calls you up and they're not calm. You know, they're panicked. They're going to have to let people go, whatever it is. And you need to help them get focused on just a couple of things. What are some of the, I know it's very general and specific to a business, each business in a very general question, but is there any advice or guidance you can give on that?
Yeah, I remember the Pareto principle that 80% of your results will get done in 20% of your activities. And 80% of your trouble will come from 20% of your activities too. So take a very serious look at how you're spending your day, how you're spending your week, and are you talking to the people that really matter? Are you spending too much time listening to the news? Everybody has opinions about this. There's so much bad information that's being put out there. So try to stay in personal touch on the phone or through Zoom, whatever medium you use, with people that matter to you. That's one thing, because I think the heart and the personal relationships helps a lot in stressful times. The other thing is conserve cash and don't outlay money. Don't pay for things in advance unless it's absolutely necessary, or if you're getting a super discount on prepaying for things. Remember during the grant and during the times after 9/11, there were a lot of organizations, a lot of companies that did very, very well, but they were very skillful leaders, skillful sailors who were able to pivot quickly and then deploy. So it's not about being busy. It's not about working your butt off, or if you're a hamster, it's not about twirling around that hamster wheel faster and faster. It's getting off the hamster wheel, stepping on the side, taking a look at the opportunities that you have in front of you, and then doing the one or two things that are going to provide the biggest return for you, either emotionally, personally, for the team, or financially. And just, you know, remember that. I got to look up the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer, because I think that it's really important. There's no point in trying to change everything right now. Everything is changing on its own. So find the one or two things that you can do that are going to make the biggest impact for the people that matter to you and for your business, and do that.
Thank you, Patty. Ezra, any parting or final thoughts from you?
Stay positive. Don't give up. Obviously, this will pass as well, just like everybody says. And recessions, and this may be a very bad recession, they do tend to be symmetrical, because when you wear down inventories, they have to be built back up on the other end. And remember that we came into this without some of the other telltale things of very bad recessions, such as irrational exuberance or excessive risk taking or too much leverage that were present in some of the other bad recessions. So there is reason to be optimistic. That's what I'd like to leave you with.
Thanks, Ezra. And I appreciate everyone. Roberta had to jump and deal with the carte blanche issues that she has to deal with. Please email me, Mittman, MITTMAN @gmail.com. I'll post it on Facebook as well for questions for us. We're very grateful to Ezra and Patty for gifting us with some of your time. There'll be links on how to reach them. It's a very nice backyard. And make sure that you, again, I would say conserve cash, and focus on a few things. Try to build your customers, because this is not what you want your business to look like at the end of the day. You want it to be better than this, okay? So out there somewhere is a whole bunch of this if you can figure out how to find it. And on that note, I'm really grateful for everyone who has shared their time with Ezra, Patty, Paul, Stuart, myself and Roberta. Thanks, everybody. You'll see this up live on Facebook and stored up there. Have a great day.
Right. Have a good night, everybody.
Conserve energy.